Good. We learned yesterday in this mimer, beautiful mimer from the first Rebbe of Chabad in a book which is called Likuti Torah, that Moses had trouble going into the tabernacle because there was a cloud over it. And then God called to him. And that's what it means, Vayikra. And if you look in the scroll, Torah scroll, there's this word Vayikra is written with a small aleph. So the Rebbe is explaining what it is, what exactly happened over there. Moses could not go into the tabernacle because the revelation of God was too great, even higher than that on Mount Sinai. It was impossible for Moses to go in there. And it says it's from a level which is called, he makes darkness his hiding place. God, Yoshet Choshech Sitro. God makes darkness his hiding place. In other words, it's such a high level of godliness that it's beyond being incomprehensible. It can't be connected to the worlds. And that's why God, in order to make the worlds in the beginning, he had to hide over himself and then hide and conceal many, many times, many processes of concealment until he could make the world. But this revelation was the revelation of the essence of the Torah. Now, the Rebbe doesn't say it over here, but really, after all, and there's a lot of discussion in the writings of the Rebbes about the subject, that what is higher, the Jewish people or the Torah? What is people, the Jewish high? In some ways, of course, the Torah is the highest. Everything comes from the Torah, everything. But on the other hand, the Jewish people, it says in the Torah, it says speak to the Jewish people. So it must have been that there was a Jewish people there, or at least in God's mind, before God wrote the Torah, because it says speak to the Jewish people. The Torah was written for the Jews. So the Jews somehow or other, at least in idea or in potential, or were there first. So Moshe, that's Moses' job, as we're going to learn that now, is to wake up the essence of what every Jew really is. Right? To make everybody, and just like people go to university to learn how to be good doctors, how to heal people. In other words, to come in contact with healing, or to be a good artist, or to be a good lawyer, or to be a good what? In other words, to come in contact with the laws that already exist, or the principles that already exist, and improve the world or something. So that's the idea that in other words, in the world, people very rarely are people born with natural automatic talents. Even the biggest geniuses, Isaac Newton and these people, they had to learn first. They had to be brought out. So that's the way the world is. People come into the world, and we have to work on the world. And why is it that way? Because that's the way it is in the Torah. God purposely made the world, and he put us in it in order that we would improve the world, that the world would become a perfect place, a place where God is, first of all, concealed, and then using precisely those things that conceal God to reveal God. This is a big novelty, and that's what God gave the Torah for. So the Rebbe said, okay, let's not get to... So the Rebbe said, Moses. We're talking about Moses and how God gave Moses these big revelations. And that was this little aleph that God was giving him, a revelation of pure godliness, but in a small way, a small aleph, in order to prepare him and lift him up so that he could receive higher levels of godliness, higher levels of truth, of reality. We're not necessarily talking about spirituality here. Spirituality is part of the creation. Talking about higher levels of the creator. And sometimes it's expressed through the spiritual world. Okay, says the Rebbe, okay, this is the essence of what God was doing when he was speaking to Moses. He was giving him this big revelation. And he gave us a few examples. This is like in the Sukkah, on Mount Sinai, for instance. On Mount Sinai, there was a cloud, and Moses went into the cloud. The cloud was there to show what type of a high revelation of godliness was that came down. And it wasn't as high as the revelation in the tabernacle. Okay, but nowadays, this is good for Moses. Moses, he passed away like 3,300 years ago, right? So he said, no, that's what we're going to learn today. In a Espestus of the Moshe, there is a branch, how do you say, a spreading out representative, an example. Espeshtuta. There is a branch of Moshe, Bekol Dora, in every generation. Every generation, there has to be one leader that he is like Moses, totally given over to connecting the Jewish people with God. Like Moses, that's his whole thing. Getting the Torah, giving it to God. Getting revelations, giving it to the Jews. Getting the Torah, giving it to the Jews. Moses' job was to bring godliness to the Jews and to elevate the Jews. Well, every Jew is a small world. Eventually, every human being, but let's take the Jews first. Every Jew is a small world. So inside of every Jew is also a little Moses, a little Moshe. And what is this Moshe? He bechinas bitol. This is the total surrender, sheyesh b'kol adam, that there is in every person. Let's go again. He named Espetus the Moshe. Espashtuta. There is a branch of Moses in every single generation.
Huh?
Because of you, you'll be able to give them money.
What?
Oh, there we go. Good. There is a representative of Moshe in every single generation. What is this Moshe? There has to be, first of all, a leader, a Jewish leader in every generation that is like Moshe, that his whole interest and talent and ability is to bring godliness to the Jewish people and to elevate the Jewish people. It could be that he does it just in a spiritual way, just by his personal service. Like there were people like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Maimonides, examples like that. But then there were people who were like the Moshe of every generation. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, it says all the leaders of the Jews. Shehem B'Kol, but also in addition to that, every Jew is an entire world. So in every single Jew, there's also a little Moses. What is this Moses in every Jew? Moshe. Bittul, a total surrender. Sheyesh B'Kol Adam, there is in every person. Shubachin is Moshe. This is the level of Moshe inside of every Jew's soul. V'nachnu ma, and like it says, like Moshe said, what are we? This level of ma means total surrender. Moshe Katuv, like it's said in another place, in another mimer, which is called Moshe Daber. Sheikar Esek Torah. Okay, now it's true, we don't have the Holy Temple anymore, so the Rebbe, but we do have the Torah. And the main thing of the Torah is to reveal godliness in the world. And the main thing of the Holy Temple was the Torah. That's why in the Holy of Holies was the Torah. So now when we learn Torah, and we learn it with the attitude, at least the idea, that this is God's Torah, and that we're bringing God's Torah into our mind and into the world. So that's what it means. In Ikar Torah, the main learning of Torah, when a person learns the Torah, tzorech liot bechinat bittul, has to be in a way of total surrender. Like anything, right? You want to learn how to play piano. So you have to be really interested and really give over yourself to hear the music and to make your fingers work properly and to play the piece the way it's supposed to be played. You want to be a doctor, you have to go according to the laws of human anatomy, and right? It means you have to be totally given over. The doctor in the middle of the operation can't all of a sudden, lift up a telephone call, talk to his friend. He has to be totally just devoted to what he's doing, to the truth. The same thing when a person learns the Torah, you have to be totally devoted to what the Torah really is. What is the Torah? The Torah is the wisdom and the will of God. And not only that, it's drawing down godliness in the world. That's called bittul. You're totally surrendered to the truth. In Hebrew, there's a better word. It's called hatama. In other words, you just do what you're supposed to do. That's called bittul. Bittul means doing what you're supposed to do. Right? You're playing basketball. you throw yourself into the game, you do exactly what's supposed to do. You don't go according to the rules of football, you don't tackle somebody or whatever, right? Same thing when you're learning the Torah. Learning the Torah means that you're uniting with the essence of God. You don't know what you're doing, doesn't make any difference. That's the fact. I mean, it does make a difference, but that's the fact. And when a person does that, it's called bittul. Bittul means total surrender, or if you want to call it hatama, what does it mean? Having the proper attitude. That is, having the attitude, in English, how would you say it? The fitting attitude. Huh? Fitting attitude. You have that's bittul. Bittul means you do what you're supposed to do. That's the idea of Moshe. Moshe, he did what God wanted him to do because that's what everybody's supposed to do. But Moses did it and he felt it. He loved God. He feared God. That's the Moses inside of each and every one of us. Moshe is called dat. Dat means connection, reality. We gave the example a lot of times in the class. Somebody gives you a check for $1 million, right? And it's a good check, a certified check, but it hasn't got your name on it. So he says, "You just won $1 million, Mr. Biff." He says, "What do you mean? My name is not Biff. My name is Smith." So, just a little mistake here. It's a little piece of dirt here on the name. That's it. Wipe it up. That's here. Oh, as soon as you hear your name and it's written to you, oh, that's dat. It becomes real. Dat means reality. Is God real? Of course God is real. Do you feel it? That's dat. Dat means feeling the reality. Shehu hamamshich, this is what draws down. A person is supposed to feel this, the reality of godliness when he learns the Torah. Then this draws down the yichud or Ein Sof. It draws down the unity of the infinite one below. You don't feel it, you don't see it, because it's too high. It's too high. We couldn't. It says in the Tanya that it's a big kindness of God. We don't feel it because if we did, I don't know if we would be able to take it. We wouldn't be able to remain conscious. There's just too much of a revelation. That's why Moses couldn't go into this tent. So now God gave us the Torah below. That's like the little olive that God is calling to us. He's giving us power. Then, with learning Torah with this proper attitude, then there'll be more godliness revealed in the soul of the person who's learning. Then the person himself becomes like the tabernacle. The word moed means meeting place, noadity. I made myself known. Shama there. Otiot noadati. I made myself known. You recognized me. Leida, to know God. God makes himself known and we can know God. This comes from this dat again, this level of dat. Not to be confused with dalet taf without an ayin. That means religion. I mean, dat means religion. Eish dat. Torah is a fiery law, fiery religion. But here it's an ayin, means dat means to connect to. Like it says, the man, it's brought in the Tanya also, the 3rd chapter. Dat from the language of the man knew his wife. It's a connection that gives fruit. Emotions, when a person connects to God, dat, then that gives emotions. So it says that you have to have this dat, this connection with God. In other words, realize that the Torah that you're learning, there it is, right in front of you. This is God's will right now. It's not just something that God gave 3,000 whatever years ago. To know God, Shehu Chaya Chayim, the God is the source of all life, the life of all lives, the source of the life of the angels, of the upper spheres. The Ein Od Milvado, and in fact, there is nothing except for God. God creates the whole world every single instant from nothing. Al derech mashkatuv, like it says, Ra'u ataki ani anihu. Like we said before, you should know that ani anihu, that I am the one. Like we said, ani rishon, ani achron. That God is infinitely above and beyond even the highest of spiritual worlds. On the other hand, God is infinitely close to us, and he's creating us every second. So he's infinitely far and infinitely close to us at the same time. This is all encapsulated in the Torah. When you learn the Torah, even the most simple idea, we're not talking about learning Kabbalah or learning mystical ideas. A person learns the most simple idea in the Torah. Right? The Breshit Bora Elokim, God created the heavens and the earth. What does it mean? At one time there was no heavens and the earth. God created the heavens and the earth. Right? You got to create, you learn a thing like this, right? It's the don't steal, 10 commandments, don't kill. Simplest things in the world, right? This comes from the essence of God, the Anochi, that's the first of the 10 commandments, and the lowest of the low, don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't. Highest and the lowest. So that's what happens when a Jew learns the Torah. It encapsulates all of this essence of God, the highest and the lowest. Hagam, even though Shemikra Zen Ne'amar al Latir, even though that this sentence says Ani Anihu, I am the one. When are we going to see that God is the infinitely high and also God is infinitely close? When are we going to see this? This is talking about La'atid. In the future, in the days of the Moshiach, after Moshiach especially brings the raising of the dead. Like we said before, but nevertheless, Koach Zeh, this power is in every single Jew. Because every Jew gets his Jewishness from the soul of Moshe. The kasher machshavto, that everyone has this ability to attach your thoughts to God. Bekesher amitz v'chazak. That's what Moses is. Moses is a person that reveals in us who we really are. Just like a person is attached to a physical thing, a person will feel godliness in the way that he feels the piece of meat the piece of bread, whatever that he eats in the afternoon, right? His shoes, his pants, God will be the most obvious thing in the world. That God is creating everything and he's creating everything for a purpose. But the power to do this comes from the Torah. And the power for us to learn Torah in the proper way, that comes from Moshe. Right? Like a person goes to university to learn from a professor. He goes to music school to learn from the expert. Right? What does he do? He opens him up to what his potentials are to be a mathematician or to be a violinist or whatever it is. So Moshe opens up our potential to be a Jew, to connect to the Creator. And this is brought into reality by learning the Torah. The Torah contains all of this power. Similarly, this is for each and every one of us can be understood also what it says, Labo El Moed, that Moshe, it says that God called him, that little aleph that gave him the power to come into this tremendously high level of the tent of meeting. It's like it says that a person, when he dies and his Torah learning remains with him. The Torah before us is a physical, it's a book in the library, like we said, it's a regular book. Like it says, I need to regalti at Ephraim, like it says, I like brought up Ephraim, my child. He's referring to the Jewish people. Perish, he it says, I took him on took him up in my arms. Perish, bechinas anochi. This level of anochi to regalti means I came down. I brought myself down to the level of the feet. In other words, God brought his Torah down. Him calling Yanim Gashmim, all of the physical things in the Torah, and especially in the oral Torah. God took them and lifted them up with tremendous love and fear. The right arm is God's love, and the left arm is God's fear, is God's awe, power. Coming to here, which is the hishtapchus hanefesh. You have to come to God. Before you learn Torah, usually you pray. The idea of praying is becoming appreciative of God, loving God, fearing God, feeling how immense the idea of what God is, how close God is, how far God is, how awesome God is, how good God is. That's what prayer is. And then after that, with this attitude of how amazingly close God is, then you learn the Torah. This raises you up. It raises the soul up to its source. Like it's written in another Maimer, Ki Tavo El Oretz. In Parshas Bahar. Look what it says also in another place. Kumilach, Rayosi. Okay, Hine. In Moshe, when Moses was here with us physically, and every generation has its Moses in it. In our generation, of course, all the Chabad people believe it's, with no doubt, it's the Rebbe. Hapirush v'lo yochal Moshe, when it says that Moses could not go into the tent, we explained before, because it was too high, the revelation was too high in the tent of meeting, in the tabernacle. That's what it meant, that there was a cloud there. The cloud showed what an amazing revelation was in there. It was the revelation of Yoshet Choshech Sitro, that God makes darkness his hiding place, his dwelling place. But in the Moses, which is inside of me and you, Shebakal Adam, Hainu Hadat, namely this level of Dat, this connection to God, which is in our godly soul. That's the Moses which is inside of us. Hapirush Kepeshuto. It means, so what does it mean that we can't go into the tent of meeting? What does it mean? Shalo yochol lebo litgalot ba'adam, that this level cannot be revealed in us. Bechinat dat zu, this level of connection and awareness of God. Machmas hester nefesh bahamis. Because of what? What's concealing it? There's a cloud that was concealing this revelation of godliness, but it shows it was very high. What's in us, this cloud? It's our natural soul, our natural personality, our natural desires and worries and fears and loves and natural considerations, natural impulses. Okay, in order, so that's what's concealing us, the dot which is inside of us, this feeling, potential feeling of godliness, appreciation of God inside of us. Why can't we go in and connect to it? Why can't we wake this up and connect it? Because there's a cloud covering over. What's the cloud? The cloud is also us. It's our natural soul. Every person, there has to be a revelation from above. I know, namely, al yedei mitzvot. Therefore, God gave us the mitzvot, and this that God gave us the mitzvot, that's going to be the little aleph. By means of this, it says kacham al zarosai. That's what it means when God says, "I will lift them up in my arms." Tzedakah teroman, because it says charity. When we do what God wants, we give of ourselves to somebody else. Especially, we give charity to others. This elevates us, like it says, "Ata yigdal na koach adonai." By means of doing the commandments, nimshach koach elyon is drawn down an upper power, makin la'alos nefesh u'lakashu l'Hashem, and to tie it to God. So that's the idea of Vayikra, the small aleph. The small aleph are the commandments. That's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe said we have to go out and put tefillin on people. Ani Okora said it says by Abraham it was an angel that called, but by Moses, God Himself called, and it's the same thing with us. God Himself is calling us. How? Through the commandments. The mitzvahs and nikra mitzvahs of melech, because the commandments are called the commandments of the king. The Itab Midrash Tanchuma, it says in Midrash Tanchuma, Parshas Vayigash, Ayu mechabdim et mitzvahs shem shuluchai. You should honor the commandments. You see someone do a commandment, you're supposed to stand up in front of them. Honor the commandments, because the commandments are my emissaries. That the shalucha shel adam says that the emissary of a person has to be like him, like we said before. Because zachartem et mitzvos Hashem v'asitem otam. That you should remember the commandments and you should do them, but it should also be v'asitem atem. You make the commandments. What does it mean? You make it. Mitzvah, because the word mitzvah, if you take the first two letters mem tzadik, and you use this principle of learning, it's also in atbash. What's atbash? Atbash means you take the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, let's go there. God creates the world through his letters. So the letters are very important. In fact, it's not that the letters are part of the world, like with us. The world is part of these letters. The world comes from these letters of God. So each and every letter has tremendous, tremendous creative power. God creates the world through his word. That's what it says in the Bible. So the Kabbalists and the other wise men understood that the letters have more important than just face value, and that each letter contains in it many, many methods and hints of interpretation. And one of them is to take the letters and exchange them, ways of exchanging letters. And there's many ways of doing this. And one of the ways of exchanging letters is what's called atbash. What's atbash? Atbash means that you exchange the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet with the first letter. Then you take the second to the last and you exchange it with the second letter. And then the third from the last with the third letter. And the first. So the first letter is Aleph. The last is Taf. So the first letter goes with the last letter. That's Aleph, Taf, that's At. Now let's take the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. That's Beit. That goes with the second to the last. That's Shin. So that's Bash. So you use this method of At Bash, and it was exchanging each letter for the letter that corresponds to it in the opposite way. Right? And one time you start from the beginning, the other time you start from the end. Of course, you can only do this 11 times because it comes in the middle eventually. But if you exchange the letters, Mem, the corresponding letter for Mem is Yud. And using this, the corresponding letter for Tzaddik is the letter Hey. That's the way it comes out. So Ad Bash comes in. So if so, it comes out Mitzvah, Mem, Tzaddik comes out to be Yud and Hey. So if so, that's God's name. Yud, Hey, and then there's the last two letters above Hey. So if so, the Adbash is Yud, Hey. If so, the mitzvah hints at that it's God's name. This is the name of God. Hainu shenikru mitzvahs remach avarim damalka, because the commandments are called the 248. Ideally, there's 248 positive commandments. And when there's the Moshiach builds the third temple, as we'll be able to do a lot more. Not now, there's not as many. So it says, so if so, the commandments are really what's called the limbs of God. Shehi b'chinas kli la'or ein sof, that is a vessel for the infinite light of God. Really, ulefamim. Sometimes the commandments are called the commandments of the king. Ki mitzvahs hamelech hitzivu hamelech, because the commandments are one time we say the commandments are godliness. It's the limb of God. Another time we say that the commandments are the commandments of the king of the universe. What does it mean? Malchut of Atzilut, this level of Malchut of Atzilut, the lowest aspect of godliness. Okay, the Inyan, what does it mean? The mitzvahs, the commandments, as they are drawn down below here in this world. So once again, what are the mitzvahs? The mitzvahs are the limbs of God, or they're just like the commandments of God. So he says, I'll tell you, like this. When the commandments are here, we see them, right? Someone offers a person, would you like to put on tefillin, sir? So these commandments, when they're separated from a person sees the commandments. So here's the tefillin, here's tzitzit, here's then they're a commandment of the king. There's something separate. The king is far away, and this is a commandment of the king. That's what the mitzvahs are, commandments are. But Shorsham, but where's the source? The source is really that they come from what's called the limbs of the king. Hainu al yudeis was the thought that when a person actually does the commandment and he makes an arousal from below, then before he does the commandment, then it's the commandment of the king. But after he does the commandment, then he reveals the fact that the commandments are Evorim Damalka. He connects himself to the king. It's like a person, you ever have that happen? Sometimes you wake up in the morning and your foot falls asleep, or your arm falls asleep, you sit in the wrong way, your hand falls asleep. And it used to happen to me more often. You wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you slept wrong, you slept on the wrong side, and you can't move your arm. You can't move it, right? what's going on? I can't move my arm. You just look at it and you do what you usually do in order to move your arm, which is just move your arm, and it just doesn't move, right? And you look at it, and sometimes it starts to tingle or something like that, and then you massage it, and then eventually, it comes back and it starts to move. So when the arm is just laying there, and it could be somebody else's arm. You have no idea what's going on. Sometimes it even loses its feeling, right? As soon as you start to move it, there's life, and then you realize that it's yours. It's the same thing, the commandments. When the commandments are down here in the world, before we do them, it's like somebody else's arm, right? But as soon as you do it, then you become connected. You become a purveyor of this will of God. All of a sudden it starts to work, right? The arm starts to work. Who's the arm? You yourself. Then that's what the commandments, then you realize that you are uniting with the creator of the universe. Now, again, it could be that you don't feel this because God purposely concealed himself to make the world. But the Rebbe, that's why we have a Rebbe. That's the Moses of our generation, to tell us not only is it true, but we can have dat, we can connect to it. We can be real. Like the check, we realize it has our name on it. That's what it means that in the beginning, the mitzvahs are called the Shluchi Hashem. Even more, listen, if you think about it, let's say you get a check that has $1 million, right? So let's say you're given $1 million. You're given $1 million and there's guards standing over there and you're given the money. What is there in the $1 million that makes you happy? Just the fact that there's these green bills that have pictures of what you have Benjamin Franklin on it, that makes you happy, right? The 10,000 pictures of Benjamin Franklin, that makes you happy. What? Because it's green. What makes you happy? Because you realize what this money can do, right? You can buy a new house, you buy a new car, you can buy this, right? Get rid of your debts. Do something. The same thing with the commandments and also with God. The commandments, when you realize that it's yours and you have the commandments, so what does it do? Here the Rebbe is explaining to us what the commandments really do. Right? The commandments themselves, they're just pieces of, leather or whatever, strings of tzitzis. It's just physical things. But when you think about it a little bit, what can it do? What's the ability? And that's what the Rebbe is explaining. Money, you can understand. Yeah, you see in advertisements, a person has a new car, he has new clothes, he has a new house. These are things that you know, right? You can get rid of all of your debts. Right? You have an easier life. You feel, so you know what's going to come from the money. What about the commandments? What's going to come from the commandments? So here the Rebbe is explaining that it's a revelation of godliness in the world, and that it actually cures the world, makes the world into a better place, right? Do we appreciate it? We don't. That's what we need a Rebbe for, to start to appreciate it. Appreciate what God is, even to come to love God. It's a commandment. Then when you do the commandments, then you realize how they were in the beginning when they were in the king. That's the whole thing of the ladder of prayer that Jacob saw. He said there were angels that were going up and down. How are they going up and down? If the angels come, first of all, they have to come down first. So he says, no, these angels, these are the commandments. And these commandments, when you do them, they go up by means of this ladder, which the ladder is the ladder of prayer that we said before. In other words, getting yourself in tune with reality. That's what prayer is. Like it says in another place regarding Yom Kippur. But nevertheless, even then, they're not really messengers like a angel. An angel is, an angel is created something from nothing. But this is like Ani Mamash. Excuse me, 1 second. I must have skipped something. Oh, that's right. Okay, so there were angels of God that were going up and down on this ladder of Jacob. What does it mean? This is the level of Malachei Elokim. These are the commandments. That these commandments, these elevate by means of the prayer. They're elevated as your feeling, your appreciation of God, is the commandments. They take you up. That's like this ladder. It takes you up of the ladder of prayer, the commandment, you realize what the source of the commandments really are. But nevertheless, even then, the commandments are not really messengers like angels are. Why? So, like the angels that spoke to Abraham, right? An angel is created something from nothing. Here, this is something, the commandments are something which is even more. This is like the angels, that was like what called to Abraham. But the commandments, this is like what called to Moshe. I myself, God himself. This is God calling to each and every one of us. That's what the commandments are. So the commandments give us power to reveal the truth that is in the commandments. That's what it means. I am prayer. Then afterwards, it's a preparation for learning the Torah. Okay, how does it usually go? Usually it goes like this. In the morning, we put on tefillin first. You give charity first. You do some commandment before you pray. Then you pray. It comes to make you appreciate the commander, God himself. And this gives you a power directly from the commander, like it was with Moses. Even more than it was to Abraham. Abraham, it says, got his initial inspiration from an angel. But when we do a commandment, that gives us an inspiration from Ani, from God himself, like Moses got. That's what it means, Ani to feel. That's what it means, I am prayer. This is the preparation for afterwards when you learn Torah. Then when you learn Torah, then the Torah is like going into the Ohel Moed. That's like going into the tabernacle. So we have, first of all, doing a commandment that draws down power from God. When a person prays, that makes him feel the connection, which is in the commandment. That's like the anuch, that's like the small aleph. And then when he learns Torah, then it's in a totally different way. But that's what it means. This learning Torah, this is, and the doing the commandments, that's what it means that God called to him from the Ohel Moed. Look what it says later on, Parshas Bamidbar, Midbar Sinai, etc., Ohel Moed. And this comes by means of learning the Torah. So first of all, you do the commandments. That's like this little aleph. Then you come to appreciate it more by prayer. That's even more, again, this level of aleph, you appreciate this revelation of the little aleph in the commandments that's given to you, that it's God himself calling to you. Then afterwards, when you learn the Torah, that's like going into the tent of meeting. That's what it means in the Maimon, which is called Agbiya L'Sheves Mashpil L'Ros B'Shamayim Vorets. That's the Torah Shebel B'chtav and Torah Shebel Peh. That's learning the written Torah and the oral Torah. Sha'azu Lirot B'chinat Bria says, it comes from this sentence that God lifts himself up to dwell, and he brings himself down to see in the heavens and the earth. That's what the Torah is. The Torah brings God down so that he can be seen in this world. Hainu al yedei bechinas ani hu hakora, by means of this fact that God says, I am the one that invites Moshe, and I am the one that speaks to him. I am the one that invites Moshe. That's the commandments. And appreciating these commandments, that's by prayer. And then afterwards, this gives the power, right, to come into the Ohel Moed. That's what it means that I am speaking. Ani medaber. That's called, another place says Ani medaber b'tzedakah. Namely, by means of the commandments that a person does in this world, he draws down into when he's learning Torah, this level of Ani. Okay, all these things we're saying, a person has to make himself sensitive to, and that's by means of prayer, proper thinking. But when you do a commandment, is the commandment gives you the energy. That's the little aleph that's calling that your prayers are more meaningful. When the prayers are more meaningful, then more genuine, then the learning Torah is also. That's what it means. Ani medaber. I myself, when you learn Torah, devorei asher samti beficha, then the Torah becomes my words that I put in your mouth. Then that says every place that you mention my name, I will come and bless you. That's the whole idea of learning the Torah. So that's what we explain what the little aleph is of Vayikra. God calling to us by means of the commandments. And then after that, by praying properly, we appreciate this little aleph. And that gives us power to go into the Oel Moed, to learn the Torah, and to bring even more godliness into the world. Okay, now we're going to continue and finish this mimer of the Rebbe, of the Sikh of the Rebbe.